Why have you changed your position? There you were saying it's under the direct control of the FBI director and all of it should be released. We're talking about the evidence you've got. It's got nothing to do with what those courts have.
Do you have any idea how the law works? Do you want me to break the law in a federal judge's order?
No, I want you to follow your own word, Director Patel. I'm not blaming anybody other than you. You're not keeping your word. You said that you would release all of the materials under your direct control. Why don't you just release the entire file as you promised to do?
I literally just told you, there are multiple federal court orders. I'm not going to break the law to satisfy your curiosity.
Watch his face in that clip. That pause before I literally just told you that's not confidence, that's a man buying time. One question from Congressman Jamie Raskin tore through the carefully constructed defenses of the FBI director.
This is a guy who the public has understood for a long time is just not qualified for the job and is nothing but, a political sycophant and flunky for Donald Trump. He's always been on an anti-gay kick. He has sacked lots of people simply for political reasons at the FBI, and he's been actively engaged in the cover-up of the crimes associated with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, and has led the opposition to release of all of the files.
Kash Patel, the man who once positioned himself as the ultimate crusader against elite cover-ups, now sits in the hot seat, forced to explain why the very files he demanded be released remain locked away under his own control. This wasn't just another congressional hearing. It was the moment a self-proclaimed truth-teller faced the consequences of his own past promises. Cameras captured every hesitation, every pivot, as Patel confronted the gap between his fiery 2023 rhetoric and his actions today. Over 200 days in power, with complete authority over the Epstein Black Book, and the victims are still waiting in the dark. But hold on. What you're about to see goes far beyond this single takedown. Get ready for the full systematic collapse of a carefully built myth, where contradictions explode and the real stakes for over 1,000 broken survivors hit like a freight train. Stay locked in because the shocking revelations coming next will leave you speechless.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, before you joined the FBI, you railed against it for covering up Jeffrey Epstein's human trafficking ring. Let me refresh your memory with this clip.
It has Epstein's list. They're sitting on it. That doesn't seem like something you should do. You're protecting the world's foremost predator. That seems like an evil thing to do, regardless of who may be embarrassed in the release of that list. Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list.
So you finished that December 2023 interview with a challenge to the FBI and harsh words for Republicans in Congress for not getting the Epstein files out to the public. You can see this clip.
Boy pants, and let us know who the pedophiles are.
Put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are, you said. You emphasized that the president and the FBI director each had complete authority to release Epstein's client list. You said Epstein's Black Book is under the, quote, direct control of the director of the FBI. Look at this clip.
This is way off the topic, but who has Jeffrey Epstein's
Black Book?
Black Book?
FBI.
But who? That is, I mean, there's...
Oh, that's under direct control of the director of the FBI.
Read that back slowly. Simple, because of who's on that list. That was Kash Patel's own explanation back in 2023 for why the FBI was allegedly protecting Epstein's client list. Not a Democrat's theory, not a conspiracy blog. Patel himself, on camera, telling a friendly right-wing podcast host that the reason the names never came out was about protecting the people named in it. Now flip the calendar forward. Patel is the FBI director. He has the exact authority he once said the director had, and the names still haven't come out. Apply his own 2023 logic to his own behavior today, and the math gets uncomfortable fast. Either that explanation was true and still applies now that he's the one in the chair, or he was lying for clout to build his brand as a MAGA truth teller. There is no third option where both statements are honest.
For me, I'm sticking with the Fourth Amendment and the Constitution. Under our Constitution, it is judges, not FBI agents or government lawyers, who must protect our privacy and our civil liberties.
Here's what makes it worse. Weeks after the Raskin exchange, Congressman Dan Goldman asked Patel point blank whether Donald Trump's name appears anywhere in the Epstein files. Patel didn't say no. He stalled. Congressman Eric Swalwell pushed back on Patel's court order excuse by quoting a sitting federal judge, Richard Berman, who stated on the record that the material held by the Justice Department dwarfs anything limited by grand jury secrecy. A federal judge said Patel's legal shield doesn't hold up. When Patel had no power, transparency was an easy moral stance. The moment the files could touch people close to this administration, following the law became the priority. The man who attacked the FBI for protecting a predator's secrets is now the one holding the door shut, and what he says next only makes it worse.
All right, so you were sworn in as director more than 200 days ago. Now the Black Book is under your direct control. So why haven't you released the names of Epstein's co-conspirators in the rape and sex trafficking of young women and girls?
The Rolodex, which is what everybody colloquially refers to as the Black Book, has been released.
Oh, no, you're talking about what the journalist got 5 years ago? No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what you were talking about there,
That's
the Black
exactly
Book
what I
under
was
the direct control of the FBI director.
We have released more material than anyone else before. The Biden administration, Obama administration had the exact opportunities to release this material, and they never did. And if you are selling the men and women of the FBI,
Why
we're not
have you
going after
changed your
child
position?
predators. Hang on, you said we're not going after child predators. 1,500 child predators arrested this year, 35% increase.
I'll reclaim my time.
4,700 child victims
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to
found.
reclaim my time if you could instruct the witness. Why have you changed your position? There you were saying it's under the direct control of the FBI director and all of it should be released. Why have you changed your
Everything
position?
that has been lawfully permitted to be released has been released. And as I told you,
Really?
the investigation was limited. And let me make something crystal clear. I never said Jeffrey Epstein didn't traffic other people, other women, and they're not other victims. This is the investigation we were given from 2006, 7, and 8, and the search warrants from 2006, 7, and 8. That's what we're working with.
Well, wait, have you released all of the stuff that the FBI has seized from Epstein's house? The computers, the emails, the file cabinets, the documents? What about the financial records? Have you released all of that?
Everything the court has allowed us to release.
Which court are you talking about?
3 separate federal courts have come in and said.
We're talking about the evidence you've got. It's got nothing to do with what those courts have.
Do you have any idea how the law works?
Wait.
Do you want me to break the law in a federal judge's order?
No, I want you to
satisfy
follow your own
curiosity?
word, Director Patel. You said up there it was under the direct control of the FBI director. He had the Black Book.
Everything I have direct control over, we have gone to court. You haven't.
Complete
We
your
went
sentence.
to court.
Everything you have direct control over, you said.
Have gone to court, and everything we have direct
Director
control
Patel,
over.
complete your
and
sentence.
can
You said everything-
lawfully
I'd like to
release.
the
We're
gentleman-
releasing.
He'd like to complete his answer.
You began the sentence, everything you have direct control over, and then you stopped that sentence. You have released everything that you have direct control over?
And I have direct control over and can lawfully release. If you're not familiar with the court orders, that's not my fault.
Oh, I'm
Go
perfectly,
look at them.
I'm
Go
perfectly
to
familiar
court.
with them. But how did we prosecute Ghislaine Maxwell?
She was prosecuted with the investigatory material that was collected from 2001 and 2005 because of the non-prosecution agreements and the court orders on the investigations and search warrants. We were not able to develop new information. And oh, by the way, Jeffrey Epstein was out for 12 years, and the Obama and Biden administration did nothing to look at his work, his pedophile network. If you want to blame me, that's fine. But now you're blaming the men and women who conducted this
stop
great
that.
search.
I'm not blaming anybody other than you. You're not keeping your word. You said that you would release all of the materials
Has
under your
anyone
direct
released
control.
more information on Epstein than I have? Has
Well,
anyone?
much
did
more-
Comey, did Ray?
Much
Did
more.
they?
Excuse me. Much more has come out in the days since the American people in Congress have been demanding it. But it's coming out in dribs and drabs. Why don't you just release the entire file as you promised to do?
I literally just told you, there are multiple federal court orders. I'm not going to break the law to satisfy your curiosity. You didn't join us when we filed court to release the court orders. You could have. You have lawyers. You could have shown up. You didn't do that.
That's a tiny fraction of the material we're
That
talking
is
about.
not.
It is
How
a
do you-
tiny fraction.
How do you know that? Have you seen
No.
everything?
It's all
How do
misdirection.
you know?
Here's where the story gets even darker once you step back and look at what actually happened after Kash Patel took over the FBI. This wasn't some quiet bureaucratic decision made behind closed doors. Reporting points to a series of tense situation room meetings throughout 2025 where Patel, Attorney General Pam Bondi, Deputy AG Todd Blanche, and senior White House staff gathered specifically to figure out how to handle the Epstein files, with one priority reportedly being to release material that showed Trump wasn't involved. Not full transparency. Message control.
And we depend now on this system, on Kash Patel to be the check and balance against Kash Patel. The watchdogs have been removed from the scene of the crimes. How can we believe these numbers when the administration has returned all the watchdogs to the pound?
The numbers tell their own story. Of roughly 6 million pages the DOJ itself identified as potentially responsive, only about half, some 3.5 million, had actually been produced by the time Raskin was pressing him on camera. Multiple deadlines under new transparency requirements were missed entirely. Listen to that sentence he can't finish. Everything you have direct control over, you said, and then Patel just stops. He can't bring himself to say the word released because he knows exactly what happens the second it leaves his mouth. Raskin doesn't even need to interrupt. He just lets the silence do the work. That pause may be the most honest 4 seconds Kash Patel gave in the entire hearing. Watch the pivot he reaches for next: Comey, Obama, Biden, years of supposed inaction before he ever walked in the building. It's a real argument, and previous administrations did have opportunities they didn't seize. But it answers a question nobody asked. Raskin never claimed past directors were perfect. He asked why Kash Patel specifically broke a promise Kash Patel specifically made on camera. When a man responds to, "Why didn't you keep your word with other people didn't either?" that's not a defense. That's an admission dressed up as an argument. Then Raskin corners him on Ghislaine Maxwell. If the investigation was truly limited to those old 2006 to 2008 warrants, how did prosecutors manage to convict her at all? Patel's own answer basically concedes the point. No meaningful new evidence was developed under his watch. But the moment that really broke him wasn't even about the files. It was about a children's book. Watch what happens next.
While most other new FBI directors drew on their experience as FBI agents, you didn't have that. But you did write a picture book trilogy for children ages 5 and up based on your experience clashing with President Trump's political enemies. In your book, you describe your literary alter ego, Kash the Knight, as a wacky, easily bored wizard carrying out King Donald's vengeance by driving his enemies out of the kingdom. In the books, King Donald is besieged by the evil Hillary Queentown, but saved in the end by Kash. Then Kash goes on to catch mules who are stealing the 2020 election for the great King Donald from Sleepy Joe. And then in the third book, Kash takes down the Dragon of the Jalapenos, nicknamed the DOJ. Your supporters had hoped that you would graduate from imagining yourself a romantic fairy tale knight to actually running America's premier federal law enforcement agency. Alas, just as we've learned how dangerous it is to put a science-denying anti-vaxxer in charge of our public health, we've learned how dangerous it is to name as director of the FBI a man who thinks of himself as a fairy tale knight who keeps a fire-breathing dragon named DOJ at home to forcibly drive villains out of the kingdom.
Let that sink in. This is the man deciding, alone, what America gets to know about a convicted child trafficker's network. A man who wrote himself into a bedtime story as a knight and is now living out a much darker version of it in real life, minus the happy ending for the victims. That children's book moment wasn't just a gotcha. It was the final piece that made everything else make sense. Patel didn't change his mind about the Epstein files once he got power. He revealed exactly who he was all along, because while he sat in that hearing room dodging questions about direct control, new evidence was already surfacing outside the building. Just days earlier, the Epstein estate handed the House Oversight Committee a birthday book compiled by Ghislaine Maxwell, containing a note allegedly signed by Trump referencing a wonderful secret next to a novelty check joking about selling a woman. Trump denies writing it. But that book didn't come from Congress digging it up. It came from the estate, because the FBI never released it. Reporting from Raskin's office says that back in May, Attorney General Pam Bondi personally told Trump his name did appear in files. Patel was still calling legally restricted, weeks after sitting down with Trump's own former defense lawyer turned deputy attorney. General Ghislaine Maxwell was abruptly transferred to a minimum security prison inmates call a country club. When Democrats tried to subpoena the Bureau of Prisons director to explain it, every Republican on the committee except one voted no. This is what power actually does. It doesn't turn people into monsters overnight. It just removes the incentive to keep pretending. When Patel had no authority, transparency was easy to demand. When he got the authority, it became a risk to be managed. The files that could expose a network of powerful men became something portioned out carefully, with an eye on political damage instead of justice for the victims. That shift didn't happen because new legal barriers appeared. It happened because the man who once said the director had total control over the black book got that control and chose to use it differently than he promised. Remember, he couldn't even finish his own sentence in that hearing room. Everything I have direct control over, I and then silence, 3 lawmakers fighting to drag out the rest. That's not a man confident in his actions. That's a man who knows the gap between what he said as a podcaster and what he's doing as director is too wide to defend honestly. Victims who were told real accountability was coming are left watching an agency release millions of pages while still shielding the names that matter most. That isn't justice delayed, it's justice negotiated. And the man who once called that exact behavior evil is now the one at the table. Kash the Knight didn't ride in to save the kingdom. He got the keys, and quietly became the gatekeeper he once claimed to despise. So the real question isn't what Kash Patel does next. It's whether anyone watching this will still believe the next person who promises to drain the swamp. If this hit you the way it hit us, drop a comment and tell us, do you think Kash Patel ever releases the full files? Or does this get buried for good? And if you want more breakdowns like this the moment they happen, hit subscribe and turn on notifications because this story is far from over.